Hello, hello. Good morning, and welcome to day 2 of JNUC. Hope everyone's doing well. My name's Mark, a Jamf from Minneapolis. Happy to be here in Denver with you all. Today, in this room, we're having our first session of the day, Infrastructure as Code with Jamf, and it's my pleasure to introduce the presenters today, Javier Robles and Anthony Telljohann from Vanguard, and my teammates from Jamf, Shane Brown and Ryan Legg. Well, give them all a warm welcome. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Shane. Happy to be here, and hope you guys are all enjoying JNUC. So today we're going to talk about infrastructure as code with Jamf. We're going to be discussing a bit more about what it is, why you should care about it. We're going to give some examples of practical applications. We're going to be talking a bit more about how we've actually been using it at Jamf. And then we're going to let Javier and Anthony talk a bit more about how they've been bringing things further with Vanguard. But let's start with what is it? The builds are all over the place.
I know.
All right. Infrastructure as code lets you treat your infrastructure as software, which really means to us, that it's testable, repeatable, and scalable. And so when we talk about infrastructure, I think a lot of people in this room start to think of AWS or Azure or maybe even on-premises infrastructure. We want to talk about it in a bit more of a context of what I think is going to be hugely important to a lot of us in this room, and specifically managing and securing Apple. Another common term that comes up here is GitOps, right? And so I think that refers to like the workflows and the ability to utilize GitHub Actions, and that's obviously a way that you can do things and what we're going to focus on a little bit later, but you don't need to use all of that. This can be done in a completely isolated or a completely like on-premises approach. This can be done with other platforms. There's no need that you have to use GitHub, even though that's what we've been leaning into. So specifically, we've been using Terraform and using that approach when it comes to infrastructure as code. Why should you care? So let's take a quick step back, right? So I think we've all come from different experience levels here. Typically, we all start with the graphical user interface, ClickOps, right? You start with a new piece of software. You want to figure out how it works. There's usually some good documentation. You start with your workflow, kind of clicking through beginning to end, and that's all well and good, and it gets the job done. However, usually there's no version control there. Sometimes it takes a lot to get from beginning to end. Sometimes you have to do things in a very specific order to get the outcome that you need. And so then at some point, we come with a task that requires a lot more automation. Then we're going to probably lean into an API, something that simply just takes too many clicks to make sense, right? And get that mundane, repetitive task out of the way. With an API, we do typically get version control, and that gives us the ability to track our changes over time, probably in something like Git or GitHub. Specifically, if you're also using those scripts and hosting those scripts in there, you'd be able to version control with those as well. But the API endpoints also have some flaws, right? They're going to change over time. You got to keep up with those documentations. Every time a change happens, you're probably going to have to go back and update all of those bespoke scripts that you've been using to interact with the API. And so really, we're going to get what we're talking about today, where we're landing with Terraform specifically. So Terraform is a plugin or a provider, really just a recipe to interact with the API. You can build that recipe. Terraform specifically refers to them as modules, and that will interact with the API for you. Anyone can access that module. They can reproduce the exact same outcomes without needing to do the custom-built API script. It's also got a built-in way to track your changes over time. Terraform specifically refers to that as a state, and that would allow you to make sure that your infrastructure changes and revert back and whatnot as well. Additionally, Terraform providers are maintained centrally by a community. And so you're not on your own to go and build out that script. You can just lean into what's already been done. With a Terraform provider specifically, you can clone it, you can fork it, you can contribute back to it as well because it's all open source. And if you're using the provider, you're going to have a lot lower overhead. That means that you can simply just call on the provider itself. You can write all of your work in human readable format, And it's going to be a lot simpler than maintaining that bespoke API script itself.
Cool. So let's talk about how this applies to Jamf, how we've been looking at it. So we've primarily approached it 2 different ways, and I'm going to start with kind of the simple, more straightforward approach, and then kind of get into a little bit of a deeper part of how we're actually doing this. So the first thing is Jamf Onboarder, and the second thing is our GitHub repo. So we have a number of modules that kind of back our Onboarder tool. So we'll kind of talk about that as we go here. But let's focus on Jamf Onboarder just for the moment and kind of cover what that is supposed to be. So what it's here for is here for net new customers. It has a list of initial suggested configurations, so things that we typically see people set up, and we want to get people onboarded quickly and up and running with their brand new instance. And it also is customer accessible, so you don't need a Jamf employee to hold your hand while you run it, which is great. So you get your welcome email, new Jamf customer, load up Onboarder, and we can build a whole bunch of things for you. So let's see it in action. So what we're going to do here is we loaded up Onboarder. We're going to choose Custom as our option here, and we're going to choose macOS Foundation. Now these foundations have a number of additional things in them, just different common workflows. And we can do things like setting up escrowing for File Vault 2, setting up the integration between Security Cloud and Pro and Protect and Pro, and making sure that those APIs play together. We can even select a compliance benchmark. We also have a list of suggested app installers that are here ready to go. It's not the full list, it's just kind of ones that we see very commonly. And then all we do is we ask the user to input their credentials for the different consoles that you would log into to do all of this. And then what it'll do is it'll go ahead and ask them to configure it. What's great about this is it gives all the feedback. It's very straightforward. What's kind of limiting about this is that it's not very modular. We can't go in and hot swap things out and make it better. So we actually have a new version of it coming soon where we're going to be able to do things like that. So more to come on that, but you might even see some of it here at JNUC. And then at the end, we're going to tell them all the different things that you might want to do in addition, things that you can't do directly with an API, like setting up APNS in Jamf Pro. So we walk you through all of that, give you kind of a rundown, tell you what we built out for you. Again, pretty straightforward, but really intended for those new customers, which hopefully most of the people in this room are not new customers. So let's talk about what it is for everybody else. So the GitHub repo that we have a number of modules in here that, again, they all back what is in Onboarder. So everything that you see there is all actually being run through the modules that exist in this GitHub. It has quite a bit in it, but we're always, like I said, we're always adding more to it. So we're always trying to add more and make it even more functional. Now, we're actually using a Terraform provider that was created by Deployment Theory and contributed to by some of our team members. In fact, one of them is right here in the front row, Neil. So he's done a bunch of great work. The provider is fully community supported and open to everyone, but I do want to send a special thank you to a few people that couldn't be here, which is Daffod Watkins, Joseph Little, and Bobby Williams from that Deployment Theory team. I also want to thank Lloyd's Banking Group for letting them actually go through this process and create this tool, because it's been incredible to work with them, and we actually have really regular cadence with them as well, which is awesome. And then our team that's committed, like I said, Neil, myself, Dan Cutterford. So yeah, all kinds of stuff that we're building into this. Now, with this GitHub repo, we're actually using that GitOps approach. And how we're doing that is we're running these modules against test instances every 12 hours to make sure that we're ahead of any breaks in the API, any things that need to be changed inside of the actual provider, and then we're getting those changes submitted to that project as well. So always running through it, but like Shane said, we don't have to run in a GitOps approach. You can run locally, you can run really in any way you'd like to, because it's just a repo, you can just run it, which is really great. So let's see what that actually looks like. Let's see what it's like to run everything locally. So here we have a completely, well, mostly empty Jamf Pro instance. Some things are set up in here like APNS and a few other things, but there's no configuration profiles. There's no Mac apps to speak of. There's no smart groups. On the mobile device side, there's nothing here as well. No configuration profiles, no smart groups. We can also see that Jamf account OIDC for enabling blueprints and compliance benchmarks is not there as well. So let's run a Terraform command. So this is actually going to look at our instance versus the modules that we've enabled. We can see that there's 63 things that we want to add. So easy enough. If there were things I was changing, we would see that. If there was anything I removed from the code, we would also see that reflected as a destroy. Now I'm just going to confirm that I want to do this. You can actually insert an auto confirm as well, so you can just have this run without your input at all if you'd like. And then we're going to run through everything one by one. We did it in basically single parallelism. Terraform is capable of doing a lot all at once. But sometimes APIs get a little angry about that. So running it all at once enables us to have the result that we want and make sure that everything responds properly. So we can see 63 things created here. So let's take a look at what we actually made. So back to Jamf Pro, we can see the policies to not only audit but also remediate CIS are in there. All of our configuration profiles are in there to enforce CIS level 1 with all of the smart groups already pre-made and pre-assigned as scope. We can see several different Mac apps that are actually in there from app installers all ready to go. And we can see all of our smart groups. And we can switch over to Jamf account OIDC, and we can see that that was set up as well, all within that same time frame. Now, I only did 63 things. Onboarder actually does upwards of about 170, but I didn't want you guys to just have to look at a scrolling thing in terminal, right? So that's kind of the idea, and you can also see here that it even got that script in there for CIS auditing and remediation. And that, if you've ever dealt with that, is a pretty big script, and that all happened within that same time frame. So quite a bit that we can actually do here, and when it's all done, the feedback comes back, you're able to see everything, and then as you make changes with Terraform, it actually saves a state file. So it understands what you've done, and it assigns identifiers to each thing. So if you go to make a change, the next time you run a Terraform apply command, it will look for anything that needs to be changed. It'll handle that automatically. It'll look for anything it needs to remove. It'll handle that automatically, and it will always maintain this state file for you. Cool. All of that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Javier here to talk about how Vanguard is approaching Terraform for themselves.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So first of all, thank you all for being here. Surprised this many people woke up this early to be here for this talk after yesterday, so especially my own team who's here. But in all seriousness, it's really an honor and a privilege to be with you guys. We're so excited to share a little bit more of the practical side, maybe for like workplace engineering, desktop engineering, where you might see benefits in your company. So we'll cover a little bit of our environment and then why we decided to go down this path, and then Anthony will kind of get a little bit more into the architecture and some of the other benefits. So we have about 20,000-ish crew, and out of that we have about 3,200, and those numbers fluctuate, it keeps growing, Mac users, which is about 15% of our population. But just for perspective, we launched device choice just last year. We had a 6-month kind of track to just make it happen. We've grown 115% since then, and a lot of the theories around break fix and support and being able to scale up and all the things that we know throughout the years to be pretty prevalent for the macOS ecosystem have held true. And so our satisfaction rates for our CSAT scores are through the roof on the Mac platform overall. We have 4 engineers, and some of you might think, well, we have 1 person maybe managing that many devices. In larger corporations especially, we're also a shared services team, so a lot of requests come in, probably about 30 to 45%, maybe conservative estimate of how much work comes in from the outside to the team. And so we decided that we wanted to really scale up, fix fast, and make sure that core issues were dealt with very quickly, especially as we were deploying device choice. And so we scaled up to be ready for that future growth. So why did we decide to go down this journey of infrastructure as code? And I remember sitting, years ago in similar seat, listening to a talk and wondering, like, well, I don't know when we'll use this, why will this benefit us, right? But the truth is that there's many issues that this actually solves for us. So version control. I don't know how many of you have talked to, a peer throughout. They did a change, they did something, and nobody knows what the old script looked like, what changed, what was modified. You're trying to hunt that down. Maybe the person leaves, they have everything locally on their computer, God forbid. And then, so, version control helps you significantly to edit those, find what people changed, who approved them, when it was changed. Hopefully comments are in there so you see exactly why people did things. Resilience, right? So our environment is resilient by design. If something breaks, we can redeploy that exact same configuration back to our environment. and have things back exactly the way it was, within minutes of deploying, reducing downtime and recovery time. Is repeatable, right? So you do something. The best example I can give to this is one of our team members was out on holiday, and we had an issue in production in one of our build workflows. The team had to make a change to that. They did it via Terraform, got the change out pretty quickly, but then there was that oh no moment. One of our other teammates was working on the build in dev, which got overwritten by what they just did in Terraform. Well, that other team member had also done their dev work in Terraform. So that when they came back from holiday, like, no big deal, redeploy back to dev. And all the work that they were doing for our new build process for future state was just back to the way it needed to be without affecting prod. So things like that. Obviously automation, getting things kicked out, right? So how many times have you accidentally copy pasted the wrong character and putting a change in, or you missed a button, you're tired, whatever it is, you missed clicking something, doing something. This helps you automate that into production so that you don't have accidental human error. And then testing and validation, right? So we can deploy things into our dev environment and then have that repeatable deployment into other, if you have prod, if you have other test environments, you can elevate it into those environments in the same exact way that it was in your dev environment and feel confident that, again, you didn't miss a beat. So Anthony is going to tell us a little bit more on the architecture and kind of how we got here.
Thanks, Javier. All right, so I'm very excited to talk to you guys about Terraform. And I want to talk a little bit about our experience using it, just so that you guys know, we're legit, right? So we've been using Terraform for 8.5 months, and for 5.5 of those months, we've been actually using it in production. Every Mac engineer on our team has used it, and even Javier, our manager, has used it to deploy a change. And as of today, we have roughly 25% of our resources that are in Jamf are now managed in Terraform. So I think the real question we want to ask ourselves is was it worth it? Is that something that you guys should do too? I certainly think so, but I think it's important for us to look at the data. So we have had more changes, less incidents, and we've closed more vulnerabilities this year than we have in the previous year. So we've deployed 33% more changes, and we've had 43% less incidents opened, and we've had 418% more vulnerabilities closed this year. And then on top of all of that, our Mac engineers tell us that they're happier. They like this process. They're enjoying it more than what they were doing previously. So yes, I definitely think it's worth it, but before you start using Terraform, there are a few gotchas that you should probably know about. So the first thing to be aware of is that your environments are inconsistent. And to just give you a rough idea of how inconsistent those environments might be, I actually compared our non-production environment and our production environment. I looked at the scripts that we have in both of those, and only 38% of our scripts were actually consistent between the two environments. So that means 62% of those scripts are inconsistent. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because you will want to spend your time making your environments consistent, but doing that's going to take some time. So really, when you start your Terraform journey, just be prepared to have to spend your time analyzing your two environments and making sure that they are consistent and figuring out how to make them consistent. Now, another thing to be aware of is importing. So if you want to use Terraform with your existing Jamf instance and manage your existing resources that you created outside of Terraform, you're going to have to import them into Terraform in order to let Terraform manage it. So the second thing that you should remember is to import your resources based on your priorities. So said differently, don't try to import everything all at once. We tried that, and honestly, it really didn't work for us. It took way too much time. And had we tried to import, say, all of our scripts, that's when we realized we'd have to review 400 scripts before we could actually finish this process. And at the end of the day, right, our clients wouldn't even really know that we had done that work, and it would have taken so much time. So didn't really make sense, didn't work out. So instead of importing everything all at once, the recommendation here is to just import your resources based off of your priorities. So for example, if your priorities dictate that you're going to update this application, the recommendation here is to just import all of the resources related to that application. And so the next time you make a change, if you're updating the application, you can use Terraform to do that. So the third thing to remember is to import resources as they are. So if you import resources as they are, you can then safely roll back any change that you make to those resources in the future. But if you don't do that, if you try to import resources and change them at the exact same time, then you cannot safely roll back that change. And instead of actually rolling back that change, Terraform's just going to delete everything that you imported. So your only option, if you do it that way, is to fix forward. So I strongly recommend that you import resources as they are today, deploy that change out, and then you can update them in a subsequent change. Now, the last thing to remember, and the thing that I'm absolutely most excited to share with you, is to make reusable components for what you deploy most frequently. So if you want to get the most value out of Terraform, then you should spend some time and figure out what it is you spend most of your time deploying to your clients. And once you understand that, the goal should be to templatize that. So for us, we spend most of our time deploying applications. So we templatized the application deployment process by building a reusable Terraform component using a tool called Atmos. So let me show you just how easy it is for us to deploy a new application. All we need to do is set 6 variables in a YAML file. So what you're looking at on screen here is a configuration file for Adobe Photoshop 2025. Now, this isn't the whole configuration file. There is more to it than that. There are more variables that you can set. But these are the only things that are required. So if you need to quickly launch an application, these are the 6 things that you have to do. So all we have to do is set the application's name, package, path, and any processes it has. And on top of that, we also provide a category and a description for that application's install policy. Now you'll notice that there's actually more than just 6 variables up here. On line number 1, you'll notice we have a variable called enabled. I'll explain what that does in just a bit. First, let's take a look at what actually gets created in Jamf if we deploy this component. So when this component is deployed, the following policies are created in Jamf. We get an install policy that allows our crew to install the application. We get an uninstall policy that allows our crew to uninstall the application. And then we also create what we have titled a rollback policy. And that policy allows us to instantly uninstall that application from every computer. So when the application is enabled, or when that enabled variable is true, the install and uninstall policies are enabled, and the rollback policy is disabled. But when that application is disabled, or rather when we set that enabled variable to false, those features get toggled. So the install and uninstall policies get disabled, that rollback policy gets enabled, and so that means if at any point in time we needed to immediately uninstall an application from every computer, it's as simple as us just changing a true to a false. In addition, I mentioned that there are more variables here. So in addition, if there's a more complicated install, we also have variables that we can toggle that allows us to execute scripts that either run before and or after either one of the install or uninstall policies. So to kind of recap here, the things that you should take away before you start your Terraform journey, your environments are inconsistent. So be prepared to spend time making your environments consistent. Import resources based off of your priorities instead of trying to import everything all at once. Import resources as they are first so that you can safely roll back, otherwise you won't be able to. And then lastly, make reusable components for what you deploy most frequently so that your clients get more of your changes and you get more of your time back. Now I'll hand it back to Ryan and he can show you how you can get started.
Awesome. Just one thing before we hand over. I was going to say, for those of you sitting like wondering if this is either going over your head or if you're like, I'm not sure how, this seems like it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort. We recently did a fireside chat at Vanguard where we talked a little bit more to the other workplace engineering teams, and the team very much shared like, yes, at first when we looked at this, it felt like it was going to be a lot. It felt like there was just unknown territory that, so our work did slow. It did take a dip, but 6 months in now, plus whatever that number is, our work is exponentially getting faster. So it is something that will take a little bit to learn and grasp, but there's a great community behind all this, and plenty of people who are willing to partner with you and kind of share information, including ourselves. And I encourage you to like not wait, like just start getting into it and looking at it, and I think you'll definitely enjoy reaping the benefits. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, just to echo what Javier said there, we've been having a lot of conversations around this. It's a topic that keeps coming up. So obviously you all are here probably because you're interested in it. Probably a lot of you are here because of the keynote yesterday, which is incredible. So you can see that Jamf is taking this seriously, and we want to put more things out there. But you might be wondering how you can kind of get up and running. I promise all these QR codes are safe, just so you know. But this is kind of where you want to be, right? There's a number of things up here I just want to call out. So there's the Deployment Theory Jamf Pro provider. That's the big one. That's the one that was started by the Deployment Theory folks, and we've contributed to work with them on over time. There also is a Terraform registry, which if any of you have looked at Terraform and you haven't availed yourself to the Terraform registry, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's incredible. The documentation, the way it's all written out, it's so easy to read. It's so easy to get involved and get up and running. It's actually pretty incredible, and there are code examples. It's pretty awesome. And then we have our Jamf security provider, which was created by a couple of us in-house for our Jamf security cloud products. So that's up there as well. And then all the modules that you guys saw a little bit ago with that run through building out that Jamf Pro instance. So that's all there, and it's all available to you. And if you do have more interest in it, you can absolutely reach out to your account executives, and we can actually get into calls and conversations about it. We are happy to do that. We figure that's going to happen a lot more after this week, so we're prepared. So, and of course, if you find us, we're happy to answer any questions. But for now, we do have about 17 minutes left, so we can do some Q&A. And I'm not going to take away the QR codes. So if anybody didn't get them, they're still up there. So, Mark.
Great job, guys. I can handle Q&A. I will run around the room. I'll start here closer. I see your hand there. You'll be next.
Anybody but Sergio. Oh, it's Sergio.
So, quick question. I'll probably have one a little later, but I'll let other people ask other questions. For the GitHub portion or the GitOps portion, for your different environments, are you using branches, Git branches for those? Like you have a development, staging, production branch, and do you use like the sort of the Git hooks so that you need PRs from other people on the team in order to promote to production, that sort of thing?
Great question. So we do not do, our environments are not segmented by branch names. With the tool that we're using called Atmos, we are able to develop concurrently and be able to share like an instance, and we do that with branches and with components. But as for deploying to the different environments, we create releases before we deploy to those environments. And we have separate GitHub workflows for deploying to those different environments. So whenever we make a new release, or let's say we updated an existing resource, right? We would merge that to main, and after that, we can choose whether or not we want to deploy that and which environment we want to deploy that to. However, you also asked about Git hooks. So we also have several controls that are built into all of our GitHub pipelines, and then a few that we introduce specifically for our repository for managing Jamf. So at least on our team, we require at least 2 reviewers and 2 people to approve and sign off. And those two people can't be also one of the contributors to that pull request. Some other things that we do include like automatic formatting and linting. So we have to make sure that all of our code and files that we commit up also follow our style, our formatting convention, as well as is free of any like lint errors, stuff like that. Great question. Thank you.
Two-parter for Vanguard. Is your stuff open source?
Like the application component, it is not right now, but after seeing that you guys have published your own modules, it sparked our interest as well. So I think the next step for us would be, we would have to refactor it a little bit because it's tightly coupled to using that Atmos tool. But it wouldn't take much effort for us to actually make that reusable as a Terraform only component. So yeah.
And the second part, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Well, I think I really tackled those with the 4 that I shared. If I'm trying to think of another one, I'm kind of looking at these guys. Is there anything that you can come up with? Those are my big 4. Those are the big ones. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so when we started, we actually followed the convention that Jamf had set, which was you guys have one component to rule them all, and a bunch of child modules inside of that. We realized that that was not going to be really maintainable for us and how our team works, because we work concurrently. And if we are only managing one component, and when we deploy with that tool called Atmos, we would never have the ability to deploy, let's say, 2 different features at the same time to the same instance, because it's all managed by one component. We thought that that was a great way to start, and it made total sense at the beginning of our journey. But quickly we realized, just if we want to be able to work concurrently, it makes sense to organize those components based off of like outcomes and kind of features that we're delivering to clients. And that gives us the flexibility to deploy any feature to any environment that we want to.
Is the provider keeping up to date with platform APIs and as it continues to grow and evolve?
So tomorrow at 9 o'clock, a couple rooms down in Ballroom 4, my colleague Neil there will probably talk a little bit about that, but a little bit. All right, so a little bit of coverage, but we can have that conversation. There is a brand new provider that is Jamf written, that is supporting the platform APIs, so that will be ready to go. The great thing about Terraform is you can effectively use as many providers as you need for the code that you're trying to do. So like Okta has providers. This was originally for AWS. AWS has providers. You can have everything in there. So you'll actually be able to use the Jamf Pro provider that Deployment Theory created alongside of the platform provider that we have as well. So they'll actually be able to exist in tandem. And I think Neil has a follow-up on that too, so I'll let him speak about it.
One more quick one.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any gaps, like little UX things, like not being able to update like the description field of a configuration profile or anything like that?
Nothing too specific. There were a few things that have been smoothed out over time, but in more recent builds and with the work that's been done, not really. There are certain things that are not possible in the API that, of course, we can't do, but for everything else, no, not really.
And that is one of the areas where contributing back to the deployment theory
Yes.
repo and having, being able to say, oh, we found some oddities here, we need to be able to modify this piece here, and getting those pull requests in. So
Exactly.
Plenty of oddities. Regarding the platform provider, the Terraform provider, Jamf platform, as it's called, please come and see me in a minute. It is brand new, only published last week, which is why it hasn't made it into a lot of our slides, which were approved a long time ago. I've got some examples to share as well with you. An example GitHub repo with lots of example resource blocks for things like blueprints, benchmarks, and also using it with the Jamf Pro provider from our friends at Deployment Theory as well, because there are some things where you do want them to work together.
Yep.
Because they help each other.
Yep. Thank you, Neil.
Other questions? Oh, here we go. I'll keep on making my way back. Sorry, those in the back.
How are you handling doing like the Terraform apply, and are you like, is that through like a GitHub action like workflow, and are you doing any sort of Terraform plan as part of like your pull request, you know, and automating some of that workflow?
So for us, and I'm sure it's probably, they probably have a different approach to what we do, so I'm sure we can probably both answer this, but for us, our main purpose with running the GitHub workflows that we run is to make sure that there are no breaks that we have to fix, right? So that's our main objective. Theirs is to run their whole instance. For us, we just do it every 12 hours. It runs in a init through Terraform to make sure everything is working. It runs a recursive format to make sure there's nothing that's going to run into a problem. And then it checks through everything that's in a specific YAML file for us, and it just applies each thing and then destroys. So apply, destroy, just making sure everything works. Obviously, that's not how you would run a production instance, right? So Anthony, I'm sure you probably have more on that.
Yeah. So we do the plan and apply. We have a separate plan GitHub workflow from an apply GitHub workflow. And yeah, for us, that's just the process to deploy any one thing. You have to plan before you can apply, and it just kind of as like a team requirement. The thing that you should be reviewing before you apply those changes is you should be auditing the plan that it has proposed for you to make sure that there's, you know, no changes that you did not expect going into production. Yep.
If you could just comment, like, is the plan part of your pull request? And then like when you actually merge it, is that when the apply kicks off, or are you handling that, you know, just to kind of keep your state, I guess, okay, you know, and you know, if there's a failure as part of that apply, you know, is that something you reopen a pull request or revert, or?
So great question. I would say, man, I wish it was automated, and I won't get into the details, but we are in a large financial organization that has a lot of controls. So we cannot, to comply with our policies, we cannot automatically deploy. However, if we weren't governed by certain policies that prohibited that, yes, I think the way that we would set this up is a pull request, and any commit to that pull request would trigger a plan so that we don't have to like spend the time manually clicking plan over and over and over again every time we make a change. And then once that's merged to your main branch, that's when I would also probably kick off a plan to all of your environments. And then after that, I'd probably have a separate workflow to just do the applies. But for our use case, it makes a lot of sense to not automatically plan and apply, because you want to make sure that it's doing the right thing. Yeah.
Okay, so you would like merge the pull request and then you'd manually run like your deployment.
The apply, yeah,
okay.
For sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
So a couple more hands.
When you were first setting this up, were there any hurdles that you needed to jump through for either security, audit, or governance?
Yes. Thankfully for us, there wasn't too much that was going to be net new. So our company had already been using Terraform for other cloud providers. And so a lot of those Terraform providers were already, had been brought in, right, through the correct channels. So for us, the big thing that we had to bring in and get approval for and a security review of was just the provider itself. And that was relatively simple. Our security tools scan it automatically, so like I didn't even have to wait for like a manual security review. We have a tool that can analyze Go and Terraform modules, so it didn't take too much. Yeah, not too much time.
Yeah. One thing I'll say while you're getting the next question is that even though there was things to do in the beginning, like our pipeline changes are actually easier to get into our production environment just by the nature of the approvals that are already in place for them and how much peer review that is. So even though there was a little bit of work in the front end, it's actually much easier to do pipeline changes, you know, getting them out there.
Hey there, guys. Thanks for the great work. It looks nice. I'm just interested if you have tried to pair it up with TerraGrant to ease up some workflows if you have a lot of environments.
So again, great question. Instead of using TerraGrant, what we use is Atmos, and it kind of serves the same purpose. It allows us to have, in this case, like the means of it is it's YAML files, but it gives you a framework that allows you to dry up a lot of your configuration and your variables. So it's kind of it's trying to solve the same problem. It's trying to allow you to have minimal configuration and maximum flexibility when it comes to deploying.
And real quick, Mark, just so you know, there is a question up here once we're done back there, just so you know. Cool.
Hey guys, thank you. When you decided to take this path of working with the infrastructure as code, and you completely move away from using the GUI, the admin console, how do you keep track of progress completion? Let's say you push several policies or configuration profiles, and you still need to keep track of the completion of those endpoints or the machines, or you still go back to the console to see that, or you plug it into something, some dashboard? How do you manage that?
That's a great question that I don't actually know the answer to.
There are API endpoints you can query for things like that. We haven't necessarily built that because, again, most of our stuff is kind of hitting a effectively like a test environment is pretty much like most of what we're doing. But theoretically, you could set up some API calls to get that information, but nothing specific that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, we always post-certify our changes, right? So anything that goes out, someone is still going to go validate that change, like, into the web interface, right? And confirm that things are set right. We make sure that on production machines that things are getting deployed correctly, right? So we have a post-certification process that whether it's a pipeline change or a manual change, we would have to do. That's just, right, due diligence. Yep. So that covers us in that case. Certainly, as there's more ability to do it through, scripting, that is another layer we can add into it. But today it is a human in the loop.
And I'll also point out too, like, you could always have an auditor login for Jamf Pro. So like, it's not going to make any changes, but at least it's able to validate that the workflow happened.
Touching on the like CI/CD piece for like the testing and the formatting, linting, and the apply, are you handling that all like through GitHub Actions? Yeah, and as well as I guess the Atmos or Atlantis like ingestion, that's all being done in GitHub Actions. Or are there any other tools that you would use for that?
So yes, they're all at the very least they're GitHub workflows. Sometimes those workflows include custom GitHub Actions. For us, I think they're all using just the generic GitHub, like run some commands in bash. So for us, like our lint job is just installing node modules, and we have a package JSON that's kind of just there to manage all of the scripts and automation that we want for our code base. So nothing, off the top of my head, I can't think of any custom GitHub action that we have, or a reusable one, because all we're doing is installing dependencies and saying, hey, go run this formatter, go run this linter.
Okay, and then second question, you were using Atmos, or you're using that mainly because it's a simple ingestible YAML, rather than like making a repeatable like module that could do the applications that you're doing?
I think that's probably the biggest benefit, but to be honest, the reason why we're using it is because that's the only means we have that is approved to do Terraform changes. So that was an existing framework that existed. I wish I could take credit for finding the tool because I think it's fantastic and awesome, and managing stuff in YAML is a lot better than managing a bash script with a bunch of variables and executing Terraform with a bunch of different properties. So I think it's objectively a better way to manage your Terraform configuration. But yeah, the real reason is that's all we have. That's the only means we have.
That's a good answer.
I think we've got time for about one more question coming in close.
Hey guys, I'm just wondering if you could clarify when you were first terraforming and making your suggestion of making sure that the environments are consistent. Did you mean in the UI, like making them consistent, like uploading scripts, making sure that like they're consistent across prod and staging?
Correct, yeah. Make sure that they're consistent between the two environments. Or there's going to be some inconsistencies that are by design. They're intentional, right? Just make sure that you have consistency where you want the consistency.
Yeah, I would say like, imagine that you guys had an issue back in the day, whenever, and somebody went into production and made a quick edit to a script and just hit save, right? And then you go back into your development environment years later or months later, and you're like, hey, there's like you don't even realize that you never went and updated your source, right? So this helps with stuff like that.
Cool.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks. Thank you. Congratulations.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool.